Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today on the IT Services and Software Rankings 2024. I'm happy to be your host today. I'm Felix. I'm Senior Account Manager here at PAC, and with me is Christophe Chalons, our Chief Analyst here at PAC. He's been with us for more than 30 years, and in those 30 years, he's been in close contact with all the leading IT providers, interviewing them, creating market figures and rankings. So he's the brain behind all of this. So I'm very grateful to have him on the call today. And for also, thank you, Christophe, for taking the time and preparing this presentation today. We'll get into the presentation shortly, but first of all, a quick notice for all of you. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A at the here in this in Zoom. We will get the questions, we will collect them, and we will answer them in the end of the session. And please also know that you're all going to be muted throughout the webinar. So the only way to communicate with us is through the chat and the Q&A section. If we run out of time in the end and we don't get to answer all of your questions, we will get to you afterwards to answer them via email or in a personal contact. But yeah, with no further ado, Christophe, I will come to you in a second. I'll just go into the agenda. So Christophe's part is clear. He will speak about the rankings, the 2024 rankings. Then I will shortly show you what you can find on SITSI, and then we'll get into the Q&A. But now, Christophe,
Thank you, Felix. So first of all, I'm happy to be part of the figures, but I'm not the brain behind the figures. I'm just the one making sure that all our analysts work together and develop together some coherent view on the market and on the vendors. I will today comment the latest rankings that we published on top IT services worldwide, top software and cloud platforms worldwide, and finally top IT services in EMEA. We published already much more on our city portal already with some rankings on further countries. You will enter that, Felix, later. Let's look at the worldwide view. So here you see the worldwide top 10 IT services vendors with number 1 Accenture, which is twice as big as the number 2 TCS. Accenture had an impressive acceleration in the course of 24. The lowest quarter was in Q1 with a flat revenue in local currency. Q2 was showed a slight acceleration to 1%, Q3 5% growth, and Q4 8% growth. And Accenture already published the Q1 25 showing a further slight acceleration to a bit more than 8%. However, Accenture also emitted a warning for the following quarters due to the labil geopolitical environment and also to the development of the US federal IT spending. When we look at Accenture, in America, the acceleration was even stronger with 6% in Q3, 11% in Q4, confirmed with the same figure in Q1 25. In EMEA, there was a slight decrease in Q1 and Q2. Then Accenture returned to growth in Q3 and accelerated in Q4 with plus 6%, confirmed with even plus 8% in Q1 25. Growth is not only organic, but external growth also belongs to the IT services business, as it enables to accelerate the development in selected segments or selected industries, selected countries, selected topics. Accenture also belongs to very few companies which were able to grow in all the 3 regions in 24. Number 2 is now TCS. So TCS took over the second place from IBM last year. They reported a quite resilient growth over 24, between 2.2% in Q1, 5.5% in Q3, so 2 to 5%, and remains this range in Q1 25 with 2.5% growth. They suffered in North America with revenue decreasing between 1 and 2% over the quarters. still decreasing in Q1 25 by nearly 2%. Europe managed to grow between 1.5% and 2.5%, sorry, 1.5% and 3.5% over the quarters, driven by the UK, while continental Europe was slightly decreasing. Growth came mainly from India with a peak at plus 95% in Q3, and Middle East with resilient growth, two-digit growth over the year. Number three, IBM. IBM services revenue was flat over the year in constant currency, with a slight growth in the consulting business, mainly in the first half of the year, balanced by a decrease in the infra support business. And within consulting, the growth in EMEA was balanced by a decrease in Americas. Deloitte, as you know, they only publish, they only report once a year. The growth of the consulting business was 1.9% in fiscal year 23-24 in local currency, 1.9%. The year before it was 19.1%. And for the calendar year 24, we estimated growth of IT services around 2%. And according to Analyst, this growth was a bit higher in EMEA, while Deloitte contracted in APAC. Entity Data confirms their top 5 place. That took it over from Capgemini in 23. Entity Data reported a quite resilient growth over the quarter, between 1% and 4% quarter after quarter. They grew 2.5% in EMEA, boosted by the SAP business. They contracted slightly in Americas, and they grew by impressive 9% in Japan, which is the core market. Capgemini is the sole vendor in the top 10 with a decreasing revenue in local currency. Revenue decreased 4 quarters in a row, and Q1 showed a further decrease by 0.4% in local currency. Revenue in Americas decreased 6 quarters in a row from H2 23 to the whole of 2024 by an average of 4%. And Capgemini is not anymore in the top 10 in Americas, even excluding BPO specialists like ADP or Fiserv. However, Capgemini returned to growth in Americas in the first quarter of this year. Revenue also decreased in Europe quarter after quarter, between 0.4 and 1.8%, and Q1 showed a further deterioration. As we will see later, France is the main issue in Europe. Cognizant returned to growth in H2 24 thanks to 2 acquisitions, Sodera and Belcan. Organically, Cognizant was flat in 24. Europe decreased 3%. North America, still generating 75% of Cognizant's revenue, grew 3%. Infosys grew 3% in local currency in 2024, similar to Accenture, with a progressive acceleration from flat in Q1 to 6% growth in Q4, confirmed with plus 5% in Q1 25. Revenue was flat in North America, thanks to an acceleration in Q4. Revenue did very well in Europe, with 15% in Q3, 12% in Q4, and another 15% in Q1 25. Fujitsu grew 1% in local currency, with a slight decrease in Americas, a substantial decrease in Europe, 14% decrease, partly due to disposals, and a 5% increase in Japan, which still generates 75% of worldwide revenue. So for some of the vendors, you will see there are some discrepancies between the figure I mentioned in local currency and the figures you see on the graph, which are showing the growth in euro. Typically, in case of Fujitsu, because of the depreciation of the yen, the plus 1% in local currency turned to minus 6% in euro. And as expected, PwC took the 10th place from Kyndryl. Similar to Deloitte, PwC only reports once a year. The advisory business, that's the name of the consulting business or IT services business, grew 2.6% in fiscal year 24. In local currency, it was 9% the year before. And similar to Deloitte, growth was a bit higher in Europe, while revenue contracted in APAC. Behind this top 10, Kyndryl lost 2 places, shrinking 7% in local currency. Now ranking 12 between 2 BPO specialists, ADP and Fiserv, which both reported substantial growth, 7%. DXC, minus 6%. HCL Tech, plus 6%, completes the top 15, sorry. EY, Hitachi, CGI, Wipro, and Ethos complete the top 20. Let's now move to the top software and cloud platforms at worldwide level. What's quite impressive here by comparison to the service suppliers is the resilience in growth for nearly all of the top vendors. The pace of growth was quite stable quarter after quarter, and this applies to Microsoft with a slight slowdown in Q4, but the Azure revenue, for example, grew over 30%, sorry, in each quarter. And Q1 25 is still expected to be reported in the next days. AWS, similar, 17 to 19%. Here also, we still expect the Q1 25 in the coming days. SAP was growing 9 to 10% quarter after quarter in 24, 11% in Q1. Google, with the GCP revenue growing between 28 and 35% quarter after quarter, 31% growth in Q1. Salesforce, 8 to 10% growth in 24, 9% in Q1 25. Adobe 10 to 12% and 11% in Q1. ServiceNow 21 to 24% in 24, 19% in Q1 25. So you see, most of the vendors had a quite resilient growth, and it is quite different, as we mentioned, from the service suppliers. When we look at the picture, so Microsoft remains the clear leader among the technology suppliers. We have nearly 20% market share. Microsoft grew 16% in 24, nearly twice as fast in the Azure business, 31% to now over $80 billion. So further narrowing the gap with the AWS in the hyperscaler market. AWS confirms the second place with 19% growth, with a noticeable acceleration. By comparison, AWS grew only 14% in 23. Oracle retained third place with 8% growth, while Google closed the gap with remarkable 13%. Thus, Oracle will probably lose its place to Google in 25. The three hyperscalers will then probably monopolize the podium. Salesforce was close behind Google in 23, yet following only 10% growth in 24, and over only one-digit growth over the last 3 quarters. They now feel SAP's breath on the back. SAP's software revenue grew 12% in 24, and moreover, the cloud business grew 30%, so 3 times as fast as Salesforce. And the cloud revenue is now 2.5 times as big as the software license and maintenance business. IBM software reported the slowest growth within the top 10 with 8% growth. Adobe grew 10%. Broadcom replaces VMware in the 9th place. The VMware acquisition enables Broadcom to nearly triple the software and cloud platform revenue, while organic growth was just above 0. And in this picture, you see Intuit, which is a fully focused player on the American market, keeping its place in the top 10 with 13% growth. We will now move to the picture at EMEA level for the IT services providers. So here you see Accenture remaining the leader on the EMEA IT services market, raising its IT services revenue by 2.5% in 24. We saw a slight decrease in Q1 and Q2 by 2%, then a return to growth in Q3, ending with a strong plus 6% in Q4 in local currency. And France was the main issue, returning to growth at the end of Q4. So now all the geographies for Accenture were positive again. Italy was the market, the main locomotive of growth all along the year. It's also the market in which Accenture enjoys the highest market share in Europe. UK was the worst market in Q1 and ended with a strong growth in Q4. Germany and Spain grew average. Benelux and Nordics did a bit better. And if we look at the position in Europe, Accenture remained number 1 in Germany, number 3 in the UK, number 3 in France. And Accenture grew 8% in EMEA in Q1 25, so confirming or even improving a bit the result from Q4 24. Capgemini secured its second place, yet losing a bit of ground to its main competitor with a slight decrease, 0.5% for the services business. a bit more if we take the overall business, including engineering. France decreased 3.5%, and the situation even worsening a bit in Q4. And as we mentioned before, so France remains the main issue also in Q1 25 with approximately 5% decrease. The UK started with decreasing revenue in Q1, so similar to Accenture, yet improved along the year, ending up with plus 1.5% in Q4. Germany was flat, Nordics was nearly flat, the Netherlands did quite well. Capgemini remained number 1 in France, number 3 in Germany, and in the UK. Capgemini decreased 2% in Europe in Q1 25, as I mentioned before, so France remaining the main issue. TCS is the new number 3, replacing IBM. TCS grew 4.5% in EMEA with 5% growth in the UK. And contrasting with flat revenue in continental Europe. Germany was flat, France slightly decreasing, Benelux did well, the Nordics were flat. TCS remains number 1 in the UK, number 10 in Germany, 15 in France. And they grew again nearly 1.5% in Q1 in local currency in Europe, with continental Europe and the UK growing at a similar pace. IBM grew its IT services revenue in EMEA by 2.5%, with stronger growth at IBM Consulting around 4%. So IBM Consulting is everything except the infrastructure support business, offset by a substantial decrease in this infrastructure business, so the traditional product-related services, hardware maintenance, and so on. And the growth was the highest in the UK, sustained in Germany and Benelux, while revenue was flat in France. IBM ranks number 5 in Germany, 6 in the UK, 8 in France. Atos secured its 5th place. Also, the IT services revenue decreased 8%, half of it being inorganic, so Atos retired from some businesses. Atos decreased slightly in France and Germany. They dropped massively in the UK due to the completion of a major BPO contract. The revenue slightly increased in the Benelux, and if we look at the major countries, Atos ranks 4th in Germany, 5th in France, and 10th in the UK. While Atos was quite resilient in the first 9 months of 24, Q4 show substantial deterioration, confirmed in Q1, partly explained by the exit of non-profitable BPO activities in the UK. Deloitte, we estimated them at 3% growth in Europe, struggled in the UK and in the Netherlands, but kept growing 2 digits in Germany and Italy. They ranks 9th in the UK, 12th in Germany. They are out of the top 20 in France. DXC, minus 2%, reported a further decrease in GIS, so the infrastructure services business, a slight increase in GBS, application services business. The UK decreased 5%, continental Europe was slightly more resilient. NTT Data won 1 place, growth being driven by the SAP services business. The biggest European operations, Germany and Spain, grew average, respectively slightly over average. NTT Data is number 5 in Germany, but still out of the top 10 in France and the UK, and number 3 in Spain. Sopra Steria reported the fastest growth within our top 10 this year, thanks to substantial inorganic growth, so plus 8%. Sopra Steria grew 3.5% in France, minus 1.5% organic, and was flat in the UK. They grew nearly 2 digits in Norway, in Spain, in Italy, while they slightly contracted in Germany. Revenue in the Netherlands decreased on an organic basis, but there was a very strong growth with the takeover of Ordina at the end of 23. Kyndryl, minus 7%, lost 2 places and might lose its place in the top 10 in 25. Infosys grew 11%, won 1 place, was the fastest growing vendor at the top 15. Growth was strong, 2 digits in Germany and in the Nordics, sustained with 4 to 5% in the UK, France, and the Benelux. Infosys is now number 6 in Germany, number 10 in the UK. CGI reported plus 1% growth, with substantial growth in the UK, 4%, They contracted slightly in Germany, 2%, in France, 3.5%. They did well in Netherlands, over 6% growth, flat in Finland, slight decrease in Sweden. CGI ranks number 6 in France, number 16 in the UK, number 19 in Germany. Deutsche Telekom and T-Systems, so we consolidated both units as Deutsche Telekom more focuses on the Mittelstand, the mid-sized companies, T-Systems more on the large accounts. Reported 6% growth in 24, so very substantial growth, especially in Germany, both with T-Systems and with the SMEs focused T-business business. Also in Spain, in Austria, and in Eastern Europe. The group is number 2 in Germany. PwC with plus 6% reported buoyant growth in the Middle East, substantial growth in Germany and the Netherlands, while they struggle in the UK. KPMG is a new entrant in this top 15 with 6.5% growth, displacing Cognizant, now number 16. Growth was 2-digit in Germany, sustained with 5% growth approximately in France and while the UK declined for Cognizant. Besides Cognizant, 5 vendors fight for a top place in the top 20. EY, Worldline, HCL, Wipro, Orange. So let's see who will be the top 10, 15, and 20 next year. There will be certainly some changes due to the very challenging market environment. I'm finished with my presentation and open for questions.
Thank you very much, Christophe. Before we jump into the Q&A section, I just want to show the audience what else they can find on our research platform, Sitsi. So all the information that was shared now by Christophe are shown in the 2 rankings that you see in the top left corner. Now we will share this presentation with you. We'll also share the recording with you, so you can use this slide to go on Sitsi and find the right documents. And we will share it just after this webinar. Now, there's 2 rankings that we cover right now, but there are some further rankings. So Christophe mentioned the rankings, the local rankings every now and then. So right now we have the ones available for our core markets, France, Germany, and UK, and also for the regions, Americas and APAC additionally. So we will add further countries within the months of June to August. So we will go into detail there as well. And we also go into the vertical sectors for each of these countries a little bit after that. In Q3, Q4, we start publishing the cluster-specific topics, meaning we will focus on the rankings on topics like AI, cloud platforms, business applications, cybersecurity, and so forth. Now, if you want to stay up to date and if you want to get notified when we update or when we upload these rankings, then there's 2 ways you can do so. First of all is by subscribing to our newsletter, where we will share the newest or the latest publications. The second way, if you are a Sitsi client, you can set up an email alert by just searching for the rankings and then save search. And by that, you have a tick here that's available to set up the email notification. So this is what we have in Sitsi. If you have any further questions, please reach out to us. Now let's jump into the Q&A section. Christophe, first of all, thank you very much for presenting again. I've got a couple of questions here. The first one came up from Vicky. So she is missing ServiceNow in the cloud platform ranking. What is the reason for that?
ServiceNow is not far behind the top 10. They are in the top 10 in EMEA, but in America, Intuit is just bigger, that's all. ServiceNow is close to the top 10. I think they are 11 or 12. There are also 1 or 2 big Chinese vendors. Also, Cisco is close to the top 10. So, but ServiceNow is certainly a candidate for the top 10 in the coming 1 or 2 years.
Thank you very much. Then I will summarize two questions that are very similar to each other. So what are the most promising players for 2025, or yeah, what can we expect for 2025? What vendors will grow the most?
I think for 25, the first thing, given the geopolitical environment, I think the vendors who have the biggest end-to-end capabilities, end-to-end meaning apps and infra, meaning transformation capability, with global sourcing, with industrialized delivery, also with a readiness to take some risk with the customers, also to take over some assets, will certainly be the winners in 25 for the IT services business. If I look at the software business, the hyperscalers are for sure under pressure out of the US because of the American politics right now. They will certainly still grow over 10%, but we see out of the US, a lot of companies taking a more careful approach towards the hyperscalers. So not leaving them, but the next investment will be a bit slower than expected. I would say SAP is expected to remain quite strong. Also Adobe, and we just mentioned ServiceNow are certainly among the winners that we expect for 25 in the software business.
Thank you very much. You already answered one question here. That was about the tariffs. So thank you for that. One more question. Which challenges are expected to jump into the top 10 in the coming years? I assume worldwide.
Which challenges or
which challenges are expected to jump
within the top 10 worldwide? So we mentioned already the ones knocking on the door right now. So the top 10 includes ends with PwC. PwC, we have Cognizant, Infosys, Fujitsu, PwC ending the top 10. I could imagine Fujitsu still a bit under pressure in 25. I think so, depending whether we consider the BPO suppliers like ADP and Fiserv, they are certainly candidates for faster growth. HCL and EY are certainly among the most promising challengers in terms of growth opportunities in the coming 1 to 2 years.
Right, thank you. We just got a new question coming in. What is the trend in application development in Europe, and what services providers are strengthening in this area?
Well, application development, first of all, right now we have a very tough situation, very cautious attitude from most users. So depending also a bit on the industry. So we still have some industry segments which do quite well, like public sector, especially the defense part of public, which is boosted by all the geopolitical discussions right now. The banking business is doing better than it was. At the contrary, we have a very strong pressure in the manufacturing, automotive, retail segments. And then it depends on if you can't consider only the custom software development. So custom software development typically in certain environment is very much under pressure because it's a long-term project. We have a bit better situation in some product implementation environments like SAP. So SAP with the S4 transformation wave, we still expect nearly 2-digit growth in Europe in 25 and 26. There will then be a slowdown of growth, but again, the S4 market opportunity is very, very strong beside SAP in terms of ecosystems. I would mention, for example, ServiceNow, which is driving a good growth right now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Christophe. Now we got the half an hour full, so I would say we end this this webinar for today. So thank you everybody for attending. Thank you, Christophe, again for preparing and for presenting today. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us anytime. There's contact details at the end of the presentation of Christophe and myself. Feel free to reach out to us directly. Otherwise, yeah, wish you a good day and hope to see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Nice day to you.